everybody. Welcome. It's lovely to see you all here this evening. My name is Liz Warren. I'm the faculty director of the Storytelling Institute at South Mountain Community College. And I'm delighted to welcome you all tonight to the Care Center. And I really want to thank the Care Center for envisioning and making this series of live storytelling events happen. They started 3 years ago during the pandemic. At first, they were just online. And when we were able to be together again, they moved them back into the center so we could have evenings like this of getting to experience live storytelling the way it's meant to be experienced, which is face to face. So I'm very glad to be seeing all of your faces. Now, our theme this evening is frauds and fakery. So think about those times when you've had an experience with a fake, or with a fraud, or maybe with imposter syndrome, or maybe when you thought that it might be a good idea to go into the world as someone else just to see what would happen. Those kinds of events, those are our themes for you. That's our theme for you this evening. We have 3 fabulous storytellers. I can't wait for you to hear them. Now, one of the things that makes Gather different than the other storytelling events in the Valley is that Gather always starts with a folktale to set the theme. And the host, which is me, tells that folktale. So I have a folktale for you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now, when I saw the theme was frauds and fakery, of course, the first thing that popped into my mind was the emperor's new clothes. But you all nodded. You all know the emperor's new clothes. So I don't need to tell that. Just know that that's a really good example of a folktale about frauds and fakery. But this is a story that I don't think that you'll know, and if you do, I hope you enjoy hearing my version of it. Now, a long, long time ago in Japan, there was an old woman. And she lived by herself in a very small cottage right on the edge of the forest, not too far from the village, but not too close to the village either. And she liked it like that. She was strong and courageous, and she liked living on her own. Her kids would say to her, "Mom, you need to move into town. You need to be closer to us. We need to be able to take care of you." And she said, "No, I can take care of myself." And she could. Well, now one night, she'd made herself dinner, and she was sitting by the fire, having a cup of tea, when a horrible storm came up, a terrific storm. The wind was howling, the rain was lashing. She could hear the limbs of the trees. It sounded like they were going to just break off the trunks. And all of a sudden, there came a pounding at her door. Well, she didn't want to answer the door. She didn't know who it was. But the pounding kept on. And pretty soon she was afraid that if she didn't open the door, whoever was on the other side was just going to knock it down. And then that would be a whole other set of problems. So she went and she opened the door. She opened it just a little bit. But to her surprise, it was thrown open. And there on the other side was a tengu. And a tengu is a Japanese demon. Did I mention that this story was taking place in Japan? Good. I couldn't remember if I had or not, and it wouldn't have made any sense to you that it was a Japanese demon if I hadn't said it was in Japan, but since I did, it's all making sense so far. Now, a tengu is big, and they have wings, leathery wings, and they have red faces and long red noses. And he burst into the room. And he said, "Oh, woman, make me some tea, make it hot, make it fast." And so she did. And he went over to the fire and he flapped his wings in front of it to try and get warm again. And she kept herself together. She made him the tea. She brought it to him and he drank several cups right in a row. And he started to relax a little bit. Started feeling pleased with himself. And he looked over at the old woman and said, "I frighten you, don't I?" And she said, "Why, no, Tengu." She summoned all her courage. "Why, no, Tengu. You don't frighten me. Why, do I frighten you?" "Ha!" he said. "Tengu, frightened of an old woman like you? No, you don't frighten me." "Well, what does frighten you, Tengu?" the old woman said. "Oh," he said, "I can't stand anything thickety. No thorns, no briars. Oh, they get caught in my wings. No, nothing thickety like that. I hate that." And he was beginning to relax, and so he countered. And he said, "Well, if I don't frighten you, what does frighten you, old woman?" "Oh," she said, "well, two things primarily." She said, "two things. The first is dango." Now, dango are little sweet rice pastries, sticky sweet rice pastries. And the Tengu said, "You're frightened of sticky sweet pastries? Why on earth would you be frightened of dango?" "Oh," she said, "I just love them too much. Why, if I had dango around here, I would eat them all the time. I would get huge. I might get diabetes. I could die. No, I cannot have any dango in the house." He said, "Well then, what's the other thing that frightens you, old woman?" "Oh," she said, "even worse." She said, "I'm terrified of gold coins." He said, "Gold coins? Oh, yes. Why, if I had gold coins, people would be here all the time trying to borrow from me, trying to get me to buy things, trying to get me to send their kids to college. Can you imagine the trouble I would have if I had gold coins?" And the Tengu had to admit that made a certain sense to him. And they passed that evening in conversation, if you can imagine it. He got so relaxed that he curled up there in front of the fire and went to sleep. Now, as you can imagine, there was no sleeping for the old woman. She sat right there and watched him. And when the sun came up the next morning, she made him another cup of tea, and he was on his way. But not before she had assured him that he was welcome to come back and visit anytime he wanted. But as soon as he was gone, she went out and she cut every kind of thickety, thorny, briary thing that she could, and she completely covered her house. And as you might imagine, that night, the Tengu came back. And when he saw what she had done, he was furious, and he landed right on top of her chimney, the only little place that he could possibly land. And he hollered down the chimney at her, "You're a wicked, deceitful old woman." He said, "And don't you think that you have tricked me, old woman, because I know what you're afraid of." No, Tengu," she said, "please, no, have mercy. No mercy for a deceitful old crone like you." And he began pouring down dongo through the chimney. Stop, please, Tengu, no more." And the dongo were piling up around the floor. Oh, he said, "I'm not done with you." And then down came the gold coins. Handful after handful of gold coins descending down through that chimney. It went on for hours. Well, finally, the Tengu got tired, and he flew away. The old woman went ahead and went to bed. And the next morning, when she got up, she had platters piled high with dongo. She had stacks of gold coins on the tables, on every surface that she could possibly imagine. Now, she had a few good days with those dongo. There was plenty for her to eat. She enjoyed them. I don't know if that village had a bank or if she put those gold coins in her mattress, but whatever she did with them, she had a good long life. She had plenty of gold coins to see her through it. She was able to live wisely and well and by herself for the rest of her life. Thank you. I've been telling that story for a long time, but the older I get, the more I like it and find it, to be a source of comfort, right? If only a demon would come to the door so that I could fool him in a similar way. All right, so now we're going to move on to the true first-person stories of the evening. And our first storyteller is Brandyn Jenkins. Brandyn is a fashion designer for his own lifestyle brand, Homebody Friends. He believes comfort is the key for every homebody, and he likes to stay home for his personal growth, and he hopes that others will feel the same way. Would you please welcome Brandyn Jenkins?
Wow. How y'all doing? You guys mind if I sit on the couch? I like being comfortable. All right, so again, I'm Brandyn Jenkins. I'm a fashion designer. I design clothes for people that like to stay home. Might be a few of you in here. Well, last summer, I had my first fashion show. I had to put it together by myself. I booked every model, I designed every outfit, and I booked the venue. But the main person that I needed to get a hold of, the main person that I wanted to book, was the host. Goes by the name of Anwar Newton. And he was very hard to get a hold of. And understandably so, he had been going through some things. So nobody had really spoken to him or seen him in months, but we all knew he was okay. So that was the reassurance that I can actually get him to do the show. So one night, I guess in early April, I'm at the bar with my brother. We're at a bar called the Bikini Lounge. It sounds like a few of y'all know what that is. Well, we're there on a Tuesday night, and it's packed. Like, I mean, wall to wall packed. And it's not the biggest place either. It's, it's probably half the size of this room. But, Tuesday night, people was out there. He was loving it. And to my surprise, Anwar comes in. He walks into the bar. He's here, right? And it's packed, and when he comes in, he and I do what most black people do when we see each other from across the room, right? We make eye contact, and then we say, "What up?" That's how I knew it was him. So I went up to him, I shook his hand, I gave him a little hug. I said, "What's up, man? What you been up to?" And he said, "Yeah, man, it's been ages since I've seen you. It's good to see you, man. What you been up to?" Man, nothing much. I got these projects lined up, but I have a great opportunity that I think you would be great for. If you got a minute, I want to chop it up with you outside. So he says, "All right, cool. Let me grab a beer. I'm gonna make some rounds, and then I'll meet y'all back." I'm like, "All right, cool. This is going perfectly." Like, I never leave the house either, so the fact that I was out on a Tuesday night and he comes into the bar, the one person that I needed to speak to, I'm like, "Oh, this is perfect." So I don't know, I guess like 10 minutes go by, and I lost him. I'm like, dang, I lost him again. I'm never gonna get a hold of this dude. But I see another mutual friend of ours. His name's Chris. So I'll go up to Chris. I said, "Hey, have you seen Anwar?" And Chris is like, "Yeah, he's right there." He's pointing at him as he's walking across the room. And at this point, Anwar sees me, and we make eye contact, and he's like, "All right, come on, let's go in the back." So at this point, I get up from where I'm at. My brother comes up too, and we go outside. So now, when we get outside, he's like standing like way off in the back, right? And he's got this real standoffish look on his face. And we're getting close to him. My brother's right next to me. And I get up to him. The first thing I said was, "Hey man, my heart goes out to you. I know life gets hard. I'd have been there too, but I'm here for you." Said it to him just like that. And he looked at me, and he just said, "Thanks." And it was in that moment where he's looking at me, my brother's looking at him, and the only thing that's going through my mind is that this ain't even Anwar. This is somebody that looks exactly like him. This could have been his brother. So I got a decision to make, right? I'm in this moment. And this is right after he said thanks. I'm like, dang, what do I gotta do? What do I gotta say? Right? So I'm like, okay, maybe I can just, do I tell him, my bad, thought you was somebody else. Let me get you a drink. Have a good night. Right? That's the cordial thing to do, right? Mistaken identity happens all the time. Or do I pitch him on being the host to my fashion show? I got one chance to do this. He could be it. Who needs Anwar anyway, right? Which one do you guys think I did? You think I did it? Yes. Long story short, I have a new friend. His name's Kevin. So, as my brother and I were leaving the bar, remember when Kevin was like, "Yeah, man, it's been ages since I've seen you," right? So Kevin stops me before we're leaving the bar, and he's like, "Hey, did you used to have dreads, like really long dreadlocks?" And I'm looking at him like, "Is he the feds? Like, is he CIA? Like, how does he know?" Because it was a factual statement. I did have dreads for like 9 years, and I cut them off in 2017. So reluctantly, I said, "Yeah, I've had dreads for I had them for like 10 years. And he was like, "Oh, that's it right there. You used to come to the dispensary I worked at all the time." Oh, there go my water. But as we were walking back to the car, my brother's like, "Man, he was cool. Seemed like you knew him forever. You gonna get him to do the show? Where'd you guys even meet?" I said, "Patrick, I have no idea who that gentleman was." And as it turns out, he didn't end up being the host. I got the real Anwar to do the show. But yeah, there you have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Brandon. Good story. That's okay. I want you to turn around so people can see the back of your robe. Yes.
The mic's back on.
This is his lifestyle brand, Homebody products.
Yes, design robes and pajamas.
And Brandon, you personalize them, or you customize them for cities? Did I see that on your website?
So that's the latest collection. So I have a city series collection where I make all kind of robes like these in different cities. So this is the Phoenix. Picture here on the robe is actually downtown Phoenix, and I have several different cities that I'm working on at any given time. But I think I have over 25 cities that I've done right now and counting. So it's the latest project.
Good.
Thank you.
HomebodyFriends.com if you
Yes.
need a robe like this beautiful one right here. Thank you again,
Thank
Brandon.
you very much.
I forgot to mention when I started that when the stories are over, we're going to have a little question and answer period with all the tellers. And I'll have some questions, but there is also an opportunity for you to ask questions of the tellers as well if you would like to. So as you're listening to the stories, if something comes into your mind, hold on to it and ask them later. All right. Well, I am thrilled to bring up our next storyteller, Nate Romero. I've had the pleasure of telling stories with Nate several times over the last, I guess 10 years or so, Nate, I think? Yeah. Nate grew up in Hayden, Arizona, a tiny mining town in eastern Arizona. How many of you have ever heard of or been to? Oh, that's good. We do know some people who know. So a little bit about the mining community out there. Nate is a storyteller and an artist, and he says that he spends his days struggling with puppy fever, and you are welcome to donate to his cause by giving him your dog if you would like to. Please welcome Nate Romero.
I'll be moving it back and forth. All right, guys, I'm going to be giving you a lot of information, so I need you to slide it into perspective and keep up, all right? So I was born in 1979 in rural Arizona, and not to put it lightly, but in every room I'm in, I'm an other. I'm deaf, I'm gay, I'm Mexican, and until recently, I used to be 420 pounds. I know. You know. But here's the thing, is that I was born to a young mom who was very, very ambitious, and it was a very Catholic and Hispanic town. I don't know if any of you, so if you ever saw Tu Wong Fu, John Leguizamo's character, Chichi Rodriguez, that's my mother, you know, but you take Rosie Perez and put her inside that, and that's my mother, just full of ambition and racial rage. So, you know, she was 15 when she had me, and so, you know, we were in a small town, very Catholic, so, you know, she was going to be a welfare queen. I was going to be nothing but a retard because my grandmother was also deaf, and they knew that. It skipped every generation, so that's what they said about us. So, you know, for us, the motto growing up was don't ever let them see you sweat, and don't give them satisfaction of letting them see you cry. You know, so I always had to act like I got it, like I heard everything, you know. And in fact, actually, people will clock that I am gay before that I am deaf. In fact, something that I have heard many times in my life is, oh, you're deaf. I thought you taught that way because you're gay. I'm gonna let that one sit for you for a minute. And then, you know, and I worked in service industries. So day in and day out, just people, you know, not catching the food, not catching what kind of soda it was, not catching how they wanted their eggs done, you know. And the one thing I can't stand, that side right there, you've all done it. I'm gonna let you know you've all done it. And it just stories every single time. So I spend this life, you know, acting that I'm, you know, more able than I am, and everything is from context. What is around? What could you possibly be talking about? What is most likely the choice you make? I got to figure this out without asking you, because I'm not going to ask you what you said, because I'm not going to hear that. All right? So we're chugging along in this life, and, you know, I'm doing my best at being deaf in this hearing world. And it's very rare that I lean into my deaf privilege, and it's there. And I'm going to explain that in just a second. Deaf privilege is when I was in an argument with my roommate, and I made my point, and I took out my hearing aids. So he couldn't reply. So I made my point, took out my hearing aids, and looked at him. And all I saw was, so that's deaf privilege, and then, you know, also deaf privilege is having a woman message you and say, I believe I'm trans deaf. I should have been born deaf. I put cotton in my ears when I go and run errands. I feel weird when I hear songs I like. Yeah, blocked. Yeah, these are the kinds of people I'm dealing with. So I am a waiter, and I'm trying to keep a lid on this tightly controlled rage. And so, like I said, it's rare that I lean into my deaf privilege, but one day I am driving with my best friend in the car, and we're jamming along, being our gay little teenage selves, and I'm driving what we call the Pride Ride. The Pride Ride is a Dodge Aries. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of a Dodge Aries. These are these big box cars that the government used to buy with bench seats that only moved up and down, and the top speed is 70 miles per hour. And I don't know why, but mine was pink. I didn't make it that way, it came that way. So my friend and I are jamming down the freeway, and I look down to change my CD player, and it's on like one of the loops, like one of the 101 loops or whatever, and of course I swerve. So I look into the mirror, and the lights start flashing. Now you guys, in all of this, I never said I was a good person. Okay? Because at that point in my trunk, I might have been carrying contraband for a dude who would eventually hit me with a forehead kiss 2 weeks later. So yeah, men are trash. And I looked at my best friend and I said, I have a lot of drugs in the trunk. And he's like, oh, we are going to jail, bitch. Like, even in that moment, we were like, okay. So I'm looking at this cop coming up in the mirror, and I looked at my friend, and I say, follow my lead. Cop comes up, knocks on the window, license and registration. I just keep staring straight. License and registration. Roll down the window. What? Oh, shit, dude. You're deaf. And I looked at my friend. My friend looks at me and goes like this. And I think to myself, have I never shown this man a deaf person before? Have I never introduced him? Children of Lesser God? No, I hate Marley Madeline. No. So, okay. Okay, this is on me. I didn't check on this. I didn't check on this, okay. And I look at him, and I said, pull it back. And I'm trying hard not to laugh because I am the person in church you can't sit next to. Don't make eye contact with me. And I just look at him and I say, pull it back. And we freeze. And now I have tears because I'm trying not to laugh. And this policeman had no idea what's going on. So I turn back to him. And the policeman looks at me and goes, are you crying? And you guys, I felt like Wile E. Coyote plummeting down the side of the cliff, and I just saw a branch out of nowhere, and I just fucking snatched it, and I just, and I started fake signing at my friend, and now we sound like Beaker from Sesame Street at each other. And the cop starts panicking. Go. And now people are starting to slow down because now they see these two people spazzing out in the front seat and the seemingly big cop probably abusing them. And so now he's like, go. You can go. And I hit it. And that is how I faked out my way out of a ticket.
Nate, I got a question for you.
Oh.
Yeah.
I didn't know we were doing this.
Yeah. Nate, I feel like I should know, but I don't. How did you get into storytelling in the first place?
I actually used to do Arizona poetry slams.
Oh, okay.
And then our friend Dan Hohen Hull, started doing story slams at Lawn Gnome over on 3rd Street, downtown. Yeah. And it was the open mics that he was doing.
Oh, gotcha.
That
Okay.
how I started doing it.
No, I didn't. Okay, like I said, I think I did know that, but I had forgotten. So I heard some of you. I think some of you maybe know about the Storyline Slam that Dan Hohenhull still runs once a month at Changing Hands Bookstore in their book draft bar. Is that what it's called? First draft bar. And I can't remember which Friday it was. It was just 2 weeks ago. So is that like the 3rd Friday or something of the month? You can find them on Facebook if you're interested. It's really, really, really a wonderful slam. And that's how Nate got started. So thank you very much, Nate. Well, I'm delighted to welcome up our next storyteller, Dr. Lynette Charity. Lynette is a board-certified anesthesiologist, and as she put it, she has spent over 40 years passing gas. But she gave it up to do stand-up comedy, right? She was in the U.S. Army Medical Corps and achieved the rank of lieutenant colonel. After she left the Army, she joined private practice, and she has been pursuing her comedy career for the past several years, and she's also told stories for the Moth several times as well. Would you please welcome Dr. Lynette Charity.
I could have done that. I am a stand-up comic, you know. I don't know about my mic. Well, you've heard some really wonderful stories. Mine's going to start off a little differently, but I need you to know my journey. So in 1961, I was 9 years old, and my father was an abusive alcoholic. My mother was a battered wife. And when I was 9 years old, I saw my father hit my mother so hard that she lost consciousness. And at that moment, it was a very defining moment for me in that I was not going to have that life. I had to figure out a way to escape. But I was living in the segregated South in Virginia, Portsmouth, Virginia. How was I going to escape? What was I going to do? Well, I was watching television one night, and this new TV medical drama came on. And I see the audience here, so you will know. Ben Casey. Oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes, oh, yes. Now, I don't think that I was in love with him. He was white and male. But, you know, the point was that I identified with what he was as a doctor. Or maybe I just identified with Vince Edwards. I don't know. But I said to my mom, after watching that, I went, "Ma, I'm going to become a doctor." And all she said was, "That's nice, child." And I honestly didn't think that she even heard really what I was saying. But about 2 weeks later, when I come home from school, on my bed is a plastic medical kit. And inside that kit was a stethoscope and a blood pressure cuff and a reflex hammer and a plastic syringe. And Dr. Charity was in the house. I went outside with that thing, kids would run, because I really like to give shots. So let's fast forward to 1966. I was 14 years old. And school integration had just arrived in Virginia. Now, we all know, because you're of that age, 1954, Brown versus Board of Education, stating that public education, separate but equal, was unconstitutional. Virginia didn't get the memo. So there I am, 9th grader, getting ready to go to school, and I said to my mom, I said, "Mom, I really want to go to the white high school. Remember, I want to become a doctor, so I'm trying to figure out my journey." She said no. So I ended up doing 9th grade at my neighborhood school. Then 10th grade, it was time to apply again, and my mom said no again. She refused to sign the permission slip, so I forged her name. She found out about it. She said, it's okay. I know it seems like you really want to do this, so I'm going to let you go. But let me just tell you something. There were these 9 kids in Little Rock, Arkansas, that integrated a white high school, and some of the white kids pushed one of the girls down the stairs. And that happened in 1957. And I said, you know, Mom, you could have told me that sooner. But I went to the school. So the first day, no school bus service. They didn't get that memo either. So I had to walk. I had never been out of my neighborhood, and I had to walk out of my neighborhood across a busy street, walk through the white neighborhood to get to the school. I got over to the neighborhood, and I'm walking alone, minding my own business, and all along my path are these women dressed in their paisley robes, their slippers, their curlers, you know, and they just stared at me until one person yelled and said, "You don't belong here. Go back to where you came from." And then someone said, "Go back to Africa." Now, I know geography, and I had never been to Africa. Then one of the women steps down from her porch. She runs toward me. She picks something up off the ground, and she throws it at me. And initially, I thought it was a rock, but it turns out that it was hardened dog poop. Now, I was a sprinter in high school, so you can know where I got my skill sets, because I ran. And actually, during that first period before there was a bus, school bus, I actually would change my route, and I was making good time getting to school. So I did well at that school. They told me that I wouldn't do well at that school. I didn't have the brain power. All the excuses that they tell people. Yet I did very well. So come junior, when I was a junior, I went to the guidance counselor. Her name was Mrs. Pollard, and I said, "Mrs. Pollard, I need you to help me to apply to college." You know, I had no one in my family, so I went to my guidance counselor. And she goes, "Lynette, why on earth do you want to go to college?" And I said, "Well, I want to go to college because I'm going to go to medical school and I'm going to become a doctor." "Lynette, I'm telling you right now you might be able to get in one of those Negro colleges, but no medical school is going to take a colored girl." And with that, she refused to help me. Now, I really thought that, you know, my ship was sunk, that I wasn't going to that nothing was going to happen. I go home, I'm sitting on my porch, I'm crying. My mom comes out and goes, "Lynette, you won't believe it, but this lady from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, at this college, this women's college in Pittsburgh, she called and she wants you to come up there and do an interview. And I told her we didn't have any money at all like that, so she's going to send you a bus ticket to come and interview." And I went, "Do tell." The bus ticket came. I took a 22-hour bus ride on a Greyhound bus to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. But I left there with an acceptance letter to the college and a 4-year academic scholarship. Booyah! And you know what I did when I went back to high school? I would walk past Mrs. Pollard's office with my acceptance letter. You know, I didn't say anything. So how does this all lead into my thought process of fakery and fraud? I go to college. I do very well. I'm a double major. I get accepted to medical school, Tufts University School of Medicine, my 3rd year of college. I go to Boston. It's day 1, orientation day, and I walk in, and there are 181 other first-year medical students. I was kind of overwhelmed, but we listened to all these presentations. I met my mentor that I was going to have there, and then As we were leaving for a tour, one of the white male classmates kind of strong-armed me. He says, I got to talk to you about something. And he pushed me over into a corner. And no one else really noticed what was going on. And he stuck his finger in my face and he goes, you're only here because of affirmative action. They got a twofer with you, black and female. My friend wanted to get in and he didn't get in because of you. And you're not supposed to be here and you're probably gonna flunk out. And then he just kind of disappeared off into the rest of the crowd. And to this day, I can remember his words, but I can't remember him. But what he said to me nagged me. Was it just my gender? Was it just my race as to why I got into this prestigious medical school? Was I really supposed to be there? I actually believed that someone was going to come to class and go, we made a mistake. You don't belong here. You need to leave. It ate at me. It ate at me. It ate at me. And over time, I isolated myself from all my other classmates. I just stayed away. I did my work, but if I didn't get a perfect score on a test, I would beat myself up. They're gonna kick me out. I'm not worth it. They're just gonna kick me out. And then one day in class, about 8 months into the first year, I collapsed in class. And I was taken to the hospital. And the most significant part of that is that I weighed 80 pounds. Now, I only weigh, look at me now, but I only weighed 110 when I started, but it was a 30-pound weight loss. I had not eaten, I was not sleeping. I really felt that someone was gonna come along and just kick me out. So after I was hospitalized, and back then mental illness was not really talked about, or even the terminology that we know now called imposter syndrome. But I know now that's what I had, because I felt I had to be perfect. I felt like a fraud. I felt like I deserved none of what I had gotten, although I just told you my story. And when I look at my story, I go, I did pretty well for myself. So I get out of the hospital, and right at that time, my father died. My father had been a drinker and a smoker, and he died of metastatic esophageal cancer. I went home. I was still sick. I didn't even get to his funeral. And then I felt that I just wanted to kill myself. Why in the world should I go back? I don't belong there. But the one thing that I learned is about your tribe, finding your tribe. My mentor called my mom and said, you send her back up here to Tufts. We will get her makeup exams. We will get her through this. And I went up there, I found classmates, because I hadn't really known anybody because I was just trying to isolate. They helped me take some makeup exams, and 3 years later, 1978, I became Lynette D. Charity, MD. I probably went over my time, but yeah.
Nobody cares. That was beautiful, Lynette. Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right, so I'm not going to ask Lynette a separate question. I'm just going to invite the other storytellers to come back up, and we'll engage in some questions and answers.
She's not going to ask me a question. I'm feeling a little left out here.
I'll start with you, Lynette.
No, just kidding.
Sit down. Or can we lay down? There you go.
Lynette, thank you for that beautiful story, and beautifully told as well. How did you make the transition from being an anesthesiologist into comedy? What led you down that path?
Well, when I was 60 years old, I had a crisis. Like people have a crisis. I had been doing anesthesia for 30 years or more, and it was like, what else could I possibly do? And actually, I woke up in the middle of the night, and I went, I know what? I'm going to be a stand-up comic, lounge singer, voiceover actor.
It came to you.
It just came to me in a dream or whatever. But but then, because of the way I am, I had to pursue all of those things. I can't sing. I do have an interesting voice, but the only thing that stuck was stand-up. Yeah, so that's it.
That's very cool. I guess I should. Very cool. Thank you, Lynn. Nate, you're one of the most creative people I know, and I know that you're involved in all sorts of artistic endeavors. But I'm wondering, what does storytelling give you that other art forms don't give you? What keeps you doing storytelling?
I really love a narrative structure, so I enjoy this a little more than just straight up comedy, because I also have a very strong penchant for tragedy. And sometimes the stories I tell don't really fit on comedic stages, but mostly what I look for more in storytelling, and this actually came up before this show, where they were asking us how dark they wanted the light in the audience, but Liz said she wanted all the lights up. She wanted us to be able to see the audience, and that's when I told her, because it's less about performance as it is more about fraternity. You know, I tell these stories more to let other people know this is happening to somebody else. I feel less alone when I know other people have had an awkward moment, or they lay at night and think about something horribly embarrassing they did like 8 years ago with people they don't even talk to anymore, you know? But we all have those moments. So yeah, that's why I like storytelling. There's a lot more give and take with the audience of knowing that this is a communal thing. You know, my favorite thing to do with friends is sit around and tell stories. That's the best thing. Get some friends around, maybe make a little dinner, and just spend the night, you know, talking.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, thank you, Nate. Brandyn, when you and I were talking before the show, we were talking about comfort zones.
Right.
And I know your lifestyle brand is all about comfort, but you said something interesting about comfort zones, and I was wondering if you would talk to the audience about your concept about comfort zones and being in them or not in them, or how that changes.
So again, I don't like leaving the house, okay? Like if I could do this from home, I would. And, you know, a lot of us have, I'm pretty sure everybody has heard, you know, stay in your comfort zone or get out of your comfort zone, right? And what do you associate that comfort zone with? Being at home, right? Or being at, you know, your absolute best. You know, maybe for some people that's in the gym, for some people that's at home, for some people that's in, you know, whatever that they're passionate about. And to me, I took that statement and said, well, let me expand the comfort zone. You know, I'm already comfortable at home. Let me get comfortable here on stage. Let me get comfortable there in the interview office. Let me get comfortable at the bank or wherever I don't feel comfortable at. I want to make sure I'm comfortable there, and that's the way I do it.
Thank you. I like that. I like that idea. It doesn't have to be so binary as in or out of the comfort zone.
Right.
Thank you.
Right. You just expand the comfort zone.
Well, I'd like to ask the audience if they have any questions for the tellers or for me. Anybody have a question, something you'd like to ask one of the tellers or comment on? Marianne, did I see your hand go up? Did I see your hand flash there, Marianne? No? Okay. Oh. Oh, I see one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Just a couple of comments. For you who were part of the military, I want to formally say thank you for serving in our country. And for all three of you, your stories were very different, but the common thing that I pick out of you is you guys have a lot of tenacity and you don't put up with shit. And I really respect that because I think all of us, we need to have tenacity to move forward in our lives. And your stories, even though you were different, you exemplify that. So with that, I want to say thank you.
Great, thank you.
So the lights are a little bright. I'm seeing if we've got any other questions. Oh, yes. Go ahead, sir.
Hey, I wanted to ask, pick up on your thread regarding comfort zones.
Sure.
How comfortable are you three speaking here tonight, and maybe how comfortable were you when you started? With storytelling, I mean, in general.
I'm sorry, I thought you were thinking.
Is that for all three of us?
Yes.
All
You wanna
three.
go first? Y'all go first.
Who, me?
Yeah.
Well, I started out, when I decided I wanted to be a stand-up comic, I had a coach that said to me, you know, maybe you think you want to do that, but are you really comfortable standing up in front of a bunch of strangers and telling jokes? What I would suggest is that you do something called Toastmasters, just to see. So that's what I did. I do what my coaches tell me to do. And it was an interesting thing because of the fact that I started winning the contest. And I went to Kuala Lumpur, and I won a trophy there. And it was like, whoa. And I said, what else can I do? So then I did the moth, and and I did some other things. And I have to admit that stand-up has been sort of an up and down thing because I do get upset when people don't laugh at my jokes. But that's how it's taken me, all this stuff started when I was 60. I'm 71 now. So it's been a journey. And it will continue to be a journey. And I'm just going to ride it as long as I can.
Yeah, he asked about how comfortable you feel doing this in this setting.
I started doing this, doing slam poetry, and I had always approached that from a very confessional point of view. And so I kind of did that with storytelling too, because, like I said in my story, from the moment I was born, there is no room that I belong in. I'm always in the other, in every other room. In a room full of Mexicans, I'm deaf. In a room full of deaf people, I'm halfway hearing. In a room full of straight people, I'm gay. In a room full of, there's always just gonna be something, and I'm always gonna have these skeletons in my closet, and it's my choice to make them dance.
Well said.
I've never done anything like this before. I don't really leave the house much. So when I came across this opportunity, I was like, man, I gotta leave the house? I gotta go where? All right. But I saw it as a unique opportunity to tell my story about Homebody Friends. I don't leave the house. I don't really get to tell my story or my brand to anybody. So this is an opportunity, and I decided to take advantage of it. And I think I'll be doing storytelling a lot more moving forward. What do you guys think?
Yes. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
But would you leave the house again?
Shoot. I gotta think about it. But
gonna
yeah, I think I would.
We'll have to convince him, but I think we
You're gonna
might
have
be
to
able to.
convince him, for sure.
I'm going to answer that question too. I've been a storyteller for almost 30 years now, but I grew up in a family that my grandmother was a fabulous storyteller, and the whole family told stories, and it was sort of competitive dinner table theatrics, so there were winners, if you know what I mean. But I don't exactly get nervous, but I always get excited before I tell a story or before I MC something like this. But this is my favorite size of venue because you can see everyone, and I like that. I think as storytellers, as Nate said so well, it's about the fellowship. It's about the connecting. And when you're in a room where you can't really see everybody, I mean, they're there, but in a room like this, I can actually see everyone's faces, and that always makes me feel much more comfortable. So, yes, ma'am.
I want to tell Brandon, I love these slippers.
Oh, thank you. The Yoda slippers. They're the baby Yoda slippers, and my nephew picked them out for me. He's one. And I was like,
My question is, you're a homebody, and
That's
I've
right.
seen your designs, I don't know where, but they're wonderful.
thank you.
How are you managing to do that from your couch?
I do my best. So I run a store through Shopify. It's just all automated. So, I do all the designs, all the fulfillment, all the price setting. I don't have anybody else to help me out, so I do everything
But from your house?
from the couch. From the couch specifically. Thank you.
Can,
Brandyn is a role model for us all.
can I actually kind of want to go back to a little bit to the comfort zone thing that we were talking about earlier? That can also come and go in waves too. There was a period of time for about a year and a half where I stopped doing any shows. Well, first of all, I stopped doing shows during COVID because I did a couple of online shows and for care, and no knock against ASU Care, but I hated doing online shows because there's no audience to play off of, and I was just looking at my phone telling the story, and I'm like, well, I guess that was it. But then I had some personal stuff happen with a friend, and I, really got my feelings hurt and stuff, and so for a while there, I didn't feel like coming out here and filleting myself for somebody else's benefit. Whether, and I'm not even gonna say entertainment, because I really don't think it's just entertainment. I think for a story to matter, it has to have some beneficial, what's the word?
It has to be educational too.
Yeah, the best I can say is residue. A really good story leaves a residue on you that you can't shake for days. And sometimes it crystallizes into something new, some new perspective or new way of thinking or new approach to something. But a really good story should leave a residue on you. So yeah.
Oh, yes, sir.
This is a question for all three of the storytellers. Do you still experience racism and other isms every day in your life?
Well, that's, I have to admit that lately I haven't. Usually what I get now is, that was a bad joke. That wasn't funny. That hurts me to my heart. No, honestly, I've gone through a lot in my life. There's not much I haven't seen. I've had patients who've said they don't want, me to give them anesthesia because I'm black or I'm female or I've got a booger hanging out of my nose. They have their reasons, but that's not about me. That's about them. And I just don't allow that to take away my joy of what I'm doing. I can't, you just can't.
My question is my answer is two-parted. Number one, I identify very heavily with the homebody thing.
Thank you.
I also rarely leave the house. It is very, very little out there that competes with video game dogs and weed. It's very, very little. I'm 44 years old and I'm living the dream. I don't know what else to say.
He gets it.
Sorry. Yes, and also, the thing is that I'm sure I experienced people having racial thoughts or attitudes towards me, but not for nothing, but do you look at me and think, I'm gonna fuck with him today? I'm gonna try to make his day worse. No, I don't have that kind of look or demeanor, so I don't really deal with that a whole lot. And if I do, you could imagine I'm very direct about it. So, yeah.
For me, I think the short answer is yes. And I'm confidently introverted, so if I ain't got to say nothing to you, I won't. So I could really care less about what people think or say to me directly. But I know the check clears every time I do something, so it don't matter whether they think I'm this or that and the other. As long as I get paid at the end of the day, that's all I care about.
Money is green.
And at the same time, the same people that they hate on people like this love to go home. They love to stay at home too. So they're like, all right, like, how you gonna hit on me when you love to do the same thing? But, you know, again, that's about them. You know, it's not about us, right? So sometimes, you know, you're the dogs, sometimes you're the hydrant.
And they might as well do it in one of your comfy robes, right?
Amen. Amen.
Another question. Yes, go ahead, Marian.
For Lynette, so I am curious about your process in telling stories at the Moth or this type of format versus when you're writing jokes. How does that work differently, or does it?
Actually, it does. And what Nate was saying is that, you know, there's something called the fourth wall when we don't breach that, you know, when we're doing comedy and it's dark and we can't see anybody. But I still approach a setup premise kind of thing and a punchline to even telling a story, but it's not always a one single line. As you see, I told a story, but in my head, it was, this is the setup for this segment, this is the punch for this segment, this is the setup for this. But when I'm telling jokes, it's just, you know, I was telling them a few of the jokes that I have out there, and it's just something that's really truncated. But the process, because I've got OCD, AIDSKY, whatever, and I really have to logically think everything out. I'm not one of these people that can just tell a joke. Well, if I were AI, I could probably tell a joke off the top of my head. But yeah, so that's my process. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello. I just wanted to let all four of you know that I'm moved, touched, and inspired, and entertained. Thank you. So another thing hit me about maybe 10 years ago. I told my friend my life story, and she at the end of it, she was sobbing. And she says, "Del, you have to tell the world so people could heal." And I've been praying for, like, how am I going to do this? So maybe this is a possibility here.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll be looking forward to hearing from you, Lynette.
You got my number. Yeah.
Thank you, dear.
All right, I think we have time for one more question before we wrap up this evening.
So let me just tell you a quick joke.
Okay.
Because I think you can then see my process. Now, you know, I told you all of that stuff about, you know, growing up and everything. So I'm an anesthesiologist, and you heard about the fact of passing gas kind of thing. So I have a joke that says that, you know, anesthesia has been very beneficial to me because of the fact that growing up in the segregated South, eating collard greens and black-eyed peas, I used to pass gas for free. And now I'm an anesthesiologist, and I pass gas for a fee. Dollar bills, y'all.
Yes.
That gets a laugh every time, but you see, yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got at least one joke from Lynette before the evening was over. Let's have one more big round of applause for our storytellers this evening.
And you guys are around for our host, Liz,
Thank you.
who is wonderful.
So thank you all so much for being here this evening. The next gather is Friday, August 25th, and the theme is Force of Habit. And I believe that my colleague Travis May is going to be the host that night. Is that? I think so. He's either the host or one of the tellers. He's a fabulous storyteller, so if for no other reason, come and so you get to hear Travis May. Now, I'm gathering that we have an audience that's pretty interested in storytelling, so please do support the ASU Care Center. It's every other month, 6 times a year, that we're going to be having these events. And as you know, this is one of the most beautiful venues in the Valley and a great place to hear storytelling. So thank you, Tracy, for making it happen. But I do want to remind you about the other storytelling that is going on in the Valley. Some of you are aware of the Storyline Slam that takes place at Changing Hands Bookstore once a month, definitely worth checking out. The Moth has a competition at the Crescent Ballroom. Is it once a month, Lynette? I think it's once a month. All of these organizations are on social media, or I can connect you with them as well if you want to get my card. And then, of course, the South Mountain Community College Storytelling Institute offers courses in storytelling. I'll be offering a class in the fall called Creating and Telling Personal Stories on Thursday evening. Be happy to tell you more about that if you'd like to learn about it. So thank you all again so much for being here. Come up and greet the storytellers. We'd love to talk with you, and we'll look forward to seeing you again in August. Good night, everyone.